Hi, my name is Emily Iannelli, and I'm male to female transgender. And I've been thinking about things, trying to put things in the proper perspective. And I've been upset because I've been a very good, upstanding person. You know, I was a very good, kind, compassionate, courteous person growing up as a male. You know, I was very shy as a person, and, I tended to my schoolwork. I made sure I did well in my academics, and also I ran as a cross-country runner. And, I put my heart and soul into all that I did. And then I went to college, and I did the same. But in college, I had to focus strictly on my academics. So I didn't have sports really in that time going to school. And I went to 3 colleges. I started out at Nassau Community College, where I studied engineering science. After I got my degree at Nassau, an associate's 2-year, I transferred over to Virginia Tech, where I studied mechanical engineering, and I lasted a year there, and I was maintaining a C average, which was a whole grade down from when I was at Nassau. I was a B average, so I was very distraught. I was studying very hard, and I was very dedicated, but I was concerned that despite all my hard work and effort and being attentive to my schoolwork and the lab problems, I still was pulling a C. And so I went up to my engineering advisor, and I said, look, I would love to pursue an engineering degree. It's in my heart and soul. I wanted to be a mechanical engineer, but I'm just not getting off to the start that I had hoped to. And he tried to convince me that it's normal for students transferring to get off to a slow start, and he encouraged me to continue. But I was so anxious and nervous, and this was my really first time away from home, other than when I went to running camp in Connecticut in my junior year. But it was difficult, and I was taking harder level courses, more challenging, and I was in a lot of big lecture halls, whereas in Nassau, the biggest or largest classroom I had was roughly 40 students, and that was in my psychology class. But in my math and engineering classes and chemistry and physics classes, I had maybe 20, 25 students. So we got more individualized attention. So I regretfully turned down the offer from my engineering advisor, and I said, look, I wish I could stay. I want to really pursue the mechanical engineering degree track, but I'm not up to it right now emotionally. So I left it that I was going to take time off, and I kind of hinted to him that I will come back when I'm ready to. And he said, well, you have a spot here, but you can't take too much time because we have to admit other students into the program. So the maximum you can decide coming back is 6 months. So I said, okay, I'll let you know in 6 months what my decision is. And I did let him know. that I was planning to go to a local college. And I said, thank you, though, for your encouragement and for being my advisor from day one as a transfer student. And he wished me luck. And I said, thank you, and I appreciate all your effort and in giving me the encouragement to pursue my degree. And he was very kind, and he wished me luck. And I said, I really appreciate having you as my engineering advisor. So I started studying engineering. I was pursuing engineering in Nassau and Virginia Tech. But when I came home and went to Hofstra, I went complete circle and I studied accounting. And I was very dedicated. I passed the CPA exam, so I did well. And then I went into a career of working in the public accounting field. It took me, after graduating in 1983, no, 84 actually. I was a year later than 79 class, because 79, most of my former classmates graduated in 83. That would be 4 years. So I didn't graduate until December of 84, because I had to make up so many classes. And then, after I graduated, I didn't get any interviews with the big 6. I don't know if it was the big 8 then, the big 6, but it wasn't the big 4 yet. So it was possibly the big 8 or the big 6. Those were the interviews that you hope to get, but I didn't get, because I was only a B student and I didn't participate in extracurricular activities. So I got interviewed at a small CPA firm in New York City that specialized in hospitals. We did hospital accounting. I think the first hospital I went on an audit was Wyckoff Heights Hospital, I think, in Brooklyn. I used to drive the Interborough to get there. Now it's called the Jackie Robinson Parkway, but when I was going, it was the Interborough. And it's weird, because at that time I wasn't thinking of transitioning from male to female. At that time, because one of the personnel I had to get paperwork from and interview was actually transitioning from male to female. And some of my workmates were kind of making fun of this person, and I thought that was really mean. I respected her, and I referred to her as she, because that was her preferred pronouns. But these people that I worked with, they were mean. They would address her as a him, and it was terrible. I felt sorry for her, because I was going through that same feeling in my own mind, thinking when I transition, I want to be respected as a woman. So I was very respectful to her, and I could tell she appreciated that. And I don't think it's right that people make fun of people who are transgender or gay or whatever. We're all people. And it's not right to judge others, I don't judge people, and they shouldn't judge us. So anyway, after I was working at that hospital, I became friends with this woman, transgender woman, And I stayed in touch with her for like a year. And I found out that she had her surgery. And she was happy, living fully as a woman. So that was my very first experience in a hospital setting working for a CPA firm. So I thought it was ironic. And I think also that it was destined that I meet this person. I don't remember the name she went by, but she was pretty. And I was surprised, even though she was very pretty, people were still making fun of her, and I didn't think that was right. And so then I worked there at that firm doing proofreading, also going out on assignment. I wasn't yet a CPA because I needed to take 2 years of audit experience. So then after my year there, unfortunately I got laid off after tax season. And then I had to scramble for another job. And I took a job at a private company, Bantam Books. Now it's called Bantam Doubleday Dell. And I did accounting for a publishing company. And the one thing I remember was that we got books every month. Bantam Books, we'd get a whole box of books. Between a dozen or 15 books, all paperback. And it was like Christmas every month. And we'd get a bunch of books, and it was exciting. We could go into the box and look at all the books. And it was funny because it helped me start to read again. I mean, we got good books, even bestseller type books. And so I thought that was pretty cool. And, you know, I did some basic accounting. That's when I first started working with a spreadsheet program, but it's obsolete now. I don't even think it exists. But I learned Lotus 123. And Lotus 123 is gone. Microsoft took over. And now we use Excel. And I think Lotus 123 was part of IBM, I think. So that was my first exposure to a spreadsheet program. And I remember the name of my, well, I had two. I had the controller who I reported to, the financial person, and I had a colleague who was a supervisor. So my controller, I still remember their name. Steve Lessman was my controller. Was the controller, I mean. Victor Lum was my supervisor. Rob Glover was also one of my supervisors. And a girl by the name of Marianne, I think. I can't remember her name. I know she got married, so her name changed, obviously, through the marriage. But I think her name was Marianne. But I'm not quite sure about that. And the financial person that I had to issue monthly cash reports to was Sidney Lublang. Oh, and the big wig, the president, was John Choi. So I have a pretty good memory. I knew all these people. And I was very devoted. You know, I'd make sure I got all the cash reports in order. And I did budgets on titled books. And I worked on a computer. And that was my first exposure to working on computers and using spreadsheets and doing analysis. And I worked on their Canadian subsidiary and maintained the books. And I also did petty cash. So, you know, I learned a little bit. And then I moved on because I realized that I had passed the CPA exam. So that was one good thing about working in private. I passed the CPA exam. So I knew that I had to go back into public to get the 2 years audit experience. So then I wound up working at a firm called H.J. Berman in Manhattan, and their specialty was real estate. So I went on a lot of real estate clients, but they did subsidized housing, Section 8. So I went to a lot of clients in the Bronx and in New York City. And one of the partners was Ed Ween. He's gone. He passed away. I also worked for Howard Krams. He was another partner. I worked for Ken Trainer. I used to work with, he wasn't a partner, but he was like a senior, Harry Rosenberg. And I worked with a lot of my level, like in between junior and senior. So I worked with a Jose Martinez. I worked with Jesus Novell. I worked with Anthony Yandoli. I worked with Ira Passes. He was like the tax manager. Nelson Light. He was the one who ran the tax department. Other names, but I don't remember. And I think the timesheet lady, she was like a nitpicker. Her name was Molly. I don't remember her last name. But I worked with a whole bunch of characters. It was funny. And then the girl that I had a crush on, but she was young. She was still in college going to Baruch. But her name was Nancy Castro. And she used to sit in front of me in the tax department. And I would talk to her even though I was shy. You know, we became friends. I actually took her out on a date, too. We went to a movie. And I remember what the movie was. I think Julia Roberts was in it. But I think I forgot the name of the movie. But it was like a thriller. And I guess it was about this husband and wife where she was being abused. And he was trying to kill her. It was a weird movie, but I liked... Oh, and she fell in love with another guy, and then there was jealousy between the two, and this other guy was trying to protect her once she told him what was going on. And I remember one of the songs was Brown Eyed Girl by Van Morrison. That was one of the songs in the movie. And in the end, there was like a big fight between this guy. And she pretended that she drowned because he was trying to kill her. And she fell in the water and he left her there. But somehow she got rescued and brought back. And she was like, he thought she was dead, but she was plotting against him with her friend. And then there's a lot of suspense in the end. I wish I remembered the title of the movie, but it was pretty intense. And that was kind of our last date. And I don't think it was because of the movie. It's just that it wasn't encouraged that you date someone that you work with. So, you know, we just talked. That was about it. No romance, nothing. Plus, she was a college student. And people would tease me and say, oh, you're rocking the cradle. So I didn't want to get in trouble or anything. So the sad thing about working at H.J. Berman was, and they were very nice, was my mom had died, 1990. And I remember I was getting ready to go on a audit in Virginia. I had gone before, and then we were going for follow-up, and they had scheduled me to go to Virginia. And then the day before I was supposed to go, I went home and I found out that my mom had died. So I had to get in touch with the partner, and I said, I can't go to Virginia. You need to get a replacement because my mom passed away. And it was on short notice, but, they were very concerned about my well-being, and they said, take as much time as you need. We'll find someone who can go in your place. And so that was tough. And then like a year later, they made cutbacks. And unfortunately, I was a victim of that, so I got let go. So that was around 1992 to 1993. So in that time when I wasn't working, I was collecting unemployment. I decided, because I was doing research, and in 1992, I was 61, 71, 81, 91, 92. I was 29 when my mom died, so I was 31. I wasn't married. I didn't have a girlfriend. I was solo. I was living with my dad. But I decided to go down, because I did some research on the internet, and go to this Norfolk-based transgender clinic where they were doing surgeries, male to female. I don't know if they were doing female to male, but I know they were doing male to female. And, this was my first go-round going to a transgender facility with regard to transgender surgery. And I wanted to transition, go on hormones, and then consider doing surgery. But at that time, I don't think health insurance was covering those kinds of surgeries because they were considered cosmetic and not medically necessary yet. So, I just went out of curiosity, and I spoke to the staff. And the first woman, who was a doctor, called me in to talk to her. I was in the waiting room, and she said, so you want to do surgery, male to female? And I said, yeah. And she goes, but you're dressed androgynous. You're not dressed like a woman. And, then she had me talk to the other of her colleagues. So when I spoke to some of the colleagues, they wanted to take a physical. So I had to strip down, basically. And they had to look at my private area to see that I was good for doing that kind of surgery. And that's when they saw I had a dress on underneath. But the other woman who said I dressed androgynously didn't know that I had a dress on underneath. So once they found out, they were excited that I really am proving to them that I am, in fact, transgender, because I said I'm not a cross-dresser, I am transgender. But I didn't say transgender because that didn't come into play yet. I never heard that term back then. So I think instead of that word, I said I'm transsexual because I knew what that meant. And I said, I'm hoping to do surgery. I have to make sure that I can get it covered through insurance, and I was uncertain. So we left it at that I would follow up with them. And, I was there for a couple of hours. They did all their tests, and they gave me like itemization sheet on what I should prepare in going forward with this surgery. And they indicated like if I wanted to learn the pricing, they gave me like this sheet, and they determined like the procedures involved. And they had, I guess, all of the numbers associated with the procedures. and then they had the total price, which was pretty expensive, and I was not sure if that would be covered under insurance. And then after that, I left it that I would get back in touch with them. I told them I'm coming from New York, and they said that's fine. We do work with out-of-staters, they said. And then I said that I'll be reachable. I don't even know if I had a cell phone back then, to be honest, back in 92. And then I decided I wanted to make a road trip out of this. So I drove from there after staying overnight, and I drove to Florida. And I went to Orlando and Daytona Beach, and it was a lot of fun. I went solo, and I spent a week there, but I got sunburned pretty bad. So I wound up staying in the hotel room for like 2 days. It was torture. And even when I went out to get Chinese takeout, I was in pain. I could hardly walk. That's how burnt I was when I went to the beach. So I learned my lesson. And then after I felt healed, where I could get behind the wheel of a car, I drove home. And it was like a 22-hour drive going there, and like a 26-hour drive going home because of the traffic. And I had to stop on occasion, which I did on the first go-round also. But it was a good experience. And then I knew, most likely I wasn't ready to do the surgery, and certainly I couldn't afford the price on it. And plus I'm living at home with my dad, so how the hell am I going to be able to transition to become a female? So I knew that wasn't going to work. So I had to put it back on the back burner. And then I started going to a therapist in Astoria, Queens, who worked with the transgender community, specifically transgender patients. So I went there with the intention of transitioning. And I learned about this support group in Connecticut, and I went there, but I only went one time. I met some nice people, though. But when I was going there, I saw this horrible car accident where people were thrown from the vehicle. I saw the aftermath where they were lying in the grassy median, and there was like a mother and child, and they were all crying. So I didn't have a cell phone, so I had to go to the nearest phone booth and call and say there's a car that flipped over and people were thrown out of the car. I was very shocked, I'm not, the way I'm talking now, I wasn't talking like that. I was like literally screaming into the phone, saying there's a very bad accident, people are thrown from the car. God, it's an emergency there, and I told them the location. It's a good thing I saw the sign so I could tell them where exactly it happened. And then I went to the support group in Connecticut, and it was helpful, but it was kind of far to go, so that was my first and only time. And then I really was just going to this therapist, and we talked about transitioning, and we talked about my life and my history with depression and all that stuff with regard to my mom and dad. And I also told her that I wanted to maybe meet a girl, So I was kind of confused. I didn't know really what I wanted. And then she focused, instead of on my transition from male to female, she more focused on me meeting a girl. And after a year or two, she introduced me, or she didn't, no, she gave me a phone number for Maria. She went by the nickname of Jing. So that's how I was introduced, by her nickname, Jing, by the therapist. So I'm very shy of women in general. I really can't hold a conversation back then. So I just called her and I said, Michelle said that we could possibly hang out together. And she obviously knew her because that was her therapist also. And we did, we went together. We went to see a movie. It was a Mr. Bean movie. Then we went to Applebee's. And then we walked around the mall. And it was a nice time. And I even kissed her on the cheek after I dropped her off. And it was nice. We went to Bayshore to pick her up. She was living in her sister's apartment. And then we stayed in touch and we went out. We did basically movies. I think we tried to go ice skating, but she wasn't into it because she never learned how. And we went to the basketball court. We would play basketball or tennis at the tennis courts at Newbridge Park. And it seemed like we were interested in being together, and we eventually got married. And she got pregnant after we had a couple of rendezvous together. And then we got married. We did a civil wedding, and then we did a marriage in the church. We got married December 27th in the civil service, and we got married on September 12th of 1998. And in the church wedding, in the civil service wedding, we got married on December 27th, 1997. So sometime between that time frame, I think March, we had intercourse, and she got pregnant after she told me within a month that she was pregnant. And March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December. So she got pregnant in March, and she gave birth in December. Now, we were originally going to have the wedding in November of 98. But once we knew she was pregnant, we had to push it down to September. And we got September 12th, and we did it at the Knights of Columbus at Oceanside. And we had a good turnout. We had 103 people out of 125 invitations. So we had a good turnout. And it was a nice wedding. We had a good time. And then we went for our honeymoon in Orlando. And we spent a week there. But she was pregnant, so she really couldn't go on any rides. And it was hot. So we basically did things indoors where it was air conditioned. And we stayed at the Swan and Dolphin, which was a very expensive hotel. And we stayed there in air conditioning and watched TV. And then we got home and life went back to usual. She was working in Sands Point for an elderly couple, doing, the house chores. And I was working in the accounting profession. And after we had the church wedding, September 10th, we were preparing for Matthew's coming birth. And he was born December 8th. When we did Lamaze classes, we learned the breathing techniques. And then we had a booking at Mercy Hospital for his birth, and we had a pediatrician that we selected for the delivery of Matthew. And it was very exciting when Matthew was born. I was on cloud 9 because I never thought I would marry or have a child, so I was very happy. But I was still going through my gender struggles, and I never told my wife about it because I was scared. I never told anybody except my sisters and one of my college friends in a letter at Christmas time years before. But that was a failure. It never came to be. It didn't transition. It just was okay, they knew, but nobody talked about it. And then I was like a good father. I was a good father, trying to do my best, but I was cross-dressing. I did it on and off, and I knew it was way beyond cross-dressing. I knew there was something more than that. Because I knew I was different when I was 3. So, and I wanted to have surgery when I was 16. So I knew it was much more than cross-dressing. But when my wife caught me in the living room dressed, I had to lie, and I said, oh, I just cross-dress from time to time to alleviate stress, because I'm in a job where I'm stressed out a lot, especially during tax season. And she didn't buy it. And she came upon my closet full of women's clothes, but we really didn't talk about it after that. It was like we were both in denial. But I was very responsible. I was working, providing for the family. We were in an apartment at the time, so I was paying the rent. And then I was working for a CPA firm in Long Island in Melville, Quite Mantel, who eventually came to be Quite Mantel and DeLucia when they purchased another practice. And I was there a total of roughly 10 years, and it was the partner. He was very supportive, and, he was concerned about my son's autism, so on occasion he'd give me a couple of days off to, try to get in touch with the schools and figure out what's best for Matthew. So he was very kind that way. And there was a lot of stress in the firm, but that firm was really the first firm or the first job where my salary eclipsed $90,000 a year, including the tax and Christmas bonuses. So $90,000 was a lot for me, because anything that was the closest I got before that was like 70. So it took a $20,000 increase, but that was towards the end, because when I first started there in 2001, I was making roughly $45,000. But within that 10-year period, it doubled from 45 to 90. So they gave me increases year after year. When I was working in Brooklyn at Starrett City, at Grenadier Realty, I never got increases like that. I was lucky if I got a $2,000 increase every year. So, so I bounced around. I never found a job where I made a whole career at, unfortunately. I was bouncing around. That's one thing I hated about accounting, is you have to keep bouncing around. I didn't like that. I felt like I was unstable, that I couldn't hold a job longer than 10 years, even though 10 years is a pretty good stint in a job. So I came out when I was 51, when I was working in private again after Quite Mantel and DeLucia. I was working in Bohemia for a radioactive company that destroyed nuclear waste, or had ways of storing it. And I would go to different locations. I went to Connecticut. I went to Massachusetts. I even went to China and France. So it was pretty exciting. And I met a lot of people from India, because they also had offices in India. And it was great. I was treated with respect. But the minute I came out as transgender, that's when my world turned upside down. I wanted to transition. I knew I had to, because I was a woman inside. But that was not good. Nobody wanted to know that. Especially when I said I want to start hormones and all, and I was doing electrolysis, and I'd get these bumps in the beginning with the electrolysis, and they observed it. They could tell, and they were like, "What's going on?" And one day I even wore like women's trousers and a blouse, so I looked kind of feminine. And supervisor Satya Kolapara came up to me and said, "I want you to go home and change into appropriate clothing. You're not going to start wearing women's clothes in my under my supervision." So I literally had to go home. And she said, "If you don't change, don't come back to work." So I had to change into like a man's suit and tie and man's trousers, and I went back. But I was upset, I couldn't express myself, and it upset me. And I pleaded with them. I said, "Look, I need to transition. Are you going to be okay about that?" And they weren't too keen on it. They said, "If you're going to transition, you got to do it very slowly." And I said, "No, but once I'm on hormones, I have no control over my transition and how I'm going to transition." After talking with a while, they decide, "Okay, we'll work with you. We'll work with you and, desensitize the employees and kind of give them heads up." So it looked promising until my former partner at the CPA firm made a big stink about it and said, no, she can't work for you because it's going to cause problems. You don't want to deal with a transgender person in a high-profile position. So they made arrangements where I would work for a doctor's office in the city who had multiple locations, and I would be a controller, and they made a promise that I'd make at least 70, but I was making 90 at the CPA firm, and then I took a pay cut when I worked for VJ Technologies in Bohemia. I went from 90 down to 70. And then the firm where they told me I should go, the medical practice, they would give me 75. Big deal, a $5,000 increase. But I was going to the city, so it really didn't work out to an increase because I had to pay for the train fare, and that was expensive. So I was working there, but I noticed things were crazy from the start. They didn't give me a telephone. When they had business meetings, they never had me participate. And the owner, with the exception of the first day when he shook my hand and introduced himself and said good luck, that was the last time I really had contact with him. Until the exit interview 7 months later, where he sat with me and said, "I'm really sorry that the practice manager determined to go in another direction." He didn't even have the guts to say that he was responsible for that. He didn't want me in a high-profile position either. And he didn't give me a phone. I never participated in any business meetings, so I knew there was something up. And he was always hiring young girls right out of high school and even in college studying. So he valued them more than me, who had 30 years experience in the accounting profession, because I guess they thought I was too high-priced and they didn't want me to be in such a visible position, and they didn't even give me a phone. I had to beg for a phone because I said, how am I going to get in touch with people that I need to get in touch with? Or how am I going to arrange when is a good time for the CPA firm to come in and do their audit work? So I knew something was wrong. And I remember I was doing this survey, because in the accounting profession you have to do surveys where you put sales, revenues, the nature of the business, And I was uh, like towards the last week when it was coming up due, the practice manager like flipped out, and I said, I have a week left to finish this report. And she said, but I gave this to you 2 weeks ago. How come you didn't finish it? And I said, I've been doing other things. I promise you I will get it done before the week that it's due. And she just flipped out. And she said, you go home and you think about it. And she forced me to leave. And I was so upset. I didn't even take the subway. I just walked from up by the near the where the World Trade Center used to be, and I walked all the way from there to Penn. I was so pissed, and I thought I was being treated terribly. And then the next day I came in, she said, we're gonna pay you for a month, but you're gonna be leaving in 2 weeks. And I was devastated. I was like in shock, and I was only there for 7 months. And they determined that they wanted to go in a different direction. Yeah, right. They were going to work with the younger girls who were still in college. And they were going to push me out the door, who had 30 years experience and was very competent. But I think that the owner from France was prejudiced against me because he was old school and he didn't want anybody in the visible role as a transgender woman. So I was discriminated against, but I couldn't prove it. So I called the NAA, what is it called, where they represent you, the Civil Liberties Union or something, NCLU, I think, the NYCLU. And I got a call from the rep when I got let go, and she tried to help me, but she said, this is not going to result in a law case, and you're not going to get any money out of it. So I still did it for the principal, but nothing came out of it. And I got depressed. I fainted in the office. I wound up at Bellevue Hospital. And that's when my downhill went. And then I got transferred outpatient to Mount Sinai. And I've been at Mount Sinai now since 2013 to 19, 13, 14, 15, 18, 6 years. And I've been transitioning for 7 because I started in March of 2012 and I went on hormones in June 2012 under the watchful eye of Dr. Juliet Widoff at Callan Lord. But I am so upset the way I've been treated as a transgender woman right from the start, all because I was transgender, yet I could do the work, I was very competent, but my self-esteem took a blow, and I felt very sick. I got diagnosed with bipolar disorder, and they confirmed that I was transgender, male to female. Big shock. I knew it was that case, but I didn't know I had bipolar disorder. And they wanted me to go outpatient before they could release me. So after being there for 2 weeks, Mount Sinai came through and I had arrangements. I had to do an intake. They approved me. I started seeing the therapist and the psychiatrist. My therapist I saw from the beginning, and he was there with me to the end. But my psychiatrists were like a rotating door. I must have had 4 different psychiatrists in the span of the 3 years, and the only one who was consistent with me was my therapist. And he's also part of the LGBT community because he's gay. So he knew what I was going through, even though we have different circumstances within the LGBT community. But as a gay man, he knew what it was kind of like for me as a transgender woman. And I liked him. He was easy to talk to. He was very friendly, very knowledgeable. He was a teacher or a professor, and he was a therapist. But unfortunately, his career took off more in regard to the teaching. So he had to cut back on the the counseling. So I had to find a new counselor. I went to Kellen Lord and I started going there. And I was going there for like a year and a half, and then there were problems with insurance because they could only take Medicare, and Medicare wasn't my primary because I was also under my wife's health insurance plan. So her plan took the primary while Medicare was secondary, and they didn't have any contracts with private. They only worked with Medicare, so I had to stop going there. And then I had to seek therapy at another location in psychiatry. So I found out that in the transgender affiliation of Mount Sinai, they have psychiatry and therapy. I automatically got the psychiatry, but I had to go on a waiting list for therapy. And for whatever I have, I've never gotten a call, so I don't know if I'm on a waiting list or they took me off the waiting list. And then I found therapy. I had to bounce around until I found Central Natural Guidance based on a recommendation. So I've been going there for like a year, so I'm seeing a therapist and a psychiatrist, and I'm taking my son also to his therapist and psychiatrists. So I have that all in place, and I'm planning to do the surgery in September 10th. But I'm having some other issues going on now with my car because I got into a very bad car accident. Luckily, it was just me. I did avoid hitting a car in front of me, which would have been a catastrophe, plus the car in back. So it was a nightmare. And I'm still having nightmares. That's why I can't sleep. So I do videos or I do writing. But my videos are sincere. If I have something to talk about, I will. I don't do videos for the sake of just doing a video. I pour my heart and soul into my videos, like I did with work, like I do with my writings and my poetry. Everything I do, I pour my heart and soul into, and I think that's important, and maybe I may have some effect on someone watching it. So I have to be very careful when I do videos, because I have to portray someone who has strength and a determination to do what they set out to do. I have to, be a good role model. So I'm trying desperately to cut back on my depressing videos and focus on more upbeat videos to help people. And I did get recognition by someone who said they follow me on Facebook, my journey, and they sent me a beautiful card with a beautiful writing. It was anonymous, and they sent me a gift card, and I bought a dress yesterday, finally, with the gift card. And I did a video to say thank you, even though I don't know who the person is, male or female. But I'm very grateful, and I hope they get to see my thank you video wearing my new dress that I was able to purchase with the gift card. So I thought that was a very nice gesture, and it made me feel good, especially now with this car accident that I was involved in, which wasn't my fault. So this was a good way to cope. And every time I look for a dress and I like it, I like to buy it, but I have to work within my budget. And I also have to work in getting Matthew his clothes too. Unfortunately, it's not so easy buying clothes for my son. For whatever reasons, it seems they have more clothes for girls and women, which is quite understandable. But for guys, they got boring clothes. You don't know what to get. Same standard nonsense. It's not like what girls have. They could buy beautiful dresses, skirts, blouses. They have all kinds of colors, floral designs, and their panties and bras and swimsuits that are very smooth and silky. You couldn't even buy boy boxer shorts that feel silky. It's all cotton. It's just not the same feeling. But feminine clothing is very silky and smooth, and I enjoy that feeling. But it's frustrating when I try to get clothes for my son. And it was like that too when I was buying men's clothes. There wasn't really much of a selection. You buy a shirt, a tie, trousers, and a jacket, and you just got to make sure that it's taken up properly and that it fits and that the shirt isn't tight. You have to wear a shirt that feels comfortable, not like you have to struggle to button it. And sometimes I had to kind of get oversized shirts, and I didn't like that because sometimes the shirt would stick out of the pants, and that doesn't look too professional. But dresses, you find a pretty dress that's long. Like I tend to wear like dresses like this, where it's short, and I'm starting to try to buy dresses that are longer, that go down further down the leg, but I do buy shorter dresses, and I guess it's not like I'm trying to be a child, but, I like to dress if I like it, and I dress not like a slut, but I dress, like I should, then I will dress appropriately. Same thing with the bows. I like bows. I've been told by women now, oh, you're too old to wear bows, but they don't understand my struggle as a transgender woman and how I couldn't dress the way I wanted to all throughout my life until when I turned 51. So I don't care what others say. I'm not being mean or anything, but I'm living for me. And if I like to wear a bow, I'm going to wear a bow. And I like to match them. So I have a red dress on, so I would wear a red bow. The only difference, if I'm wearing a red dress and I don't have the right kind of red bow, then I may wear a pink bow. But generally, I like to match according to the color. So if I have a pink dress, I'll wear a pink bow. If I have a red dress, I'll wear a red bow. If I have a blue dress, I'll wear a blue bow. And if I have a multi-floral print dress, then I'll try to get a bow like with a floral pattern also. Because I like to match and color coordinate. I'm pretty good at that. And that's how I like to dress, And I am getting attention, unwanted attention by men, and I'm not comfortable. Even if I have surgery that allows me to have a vagina, I'm still not going to be interested in men, I just want to feel complete, But there is like some drawbacks to having the vaginal surgery, because then you have to use, you have to dilate more or less. I guess it's when a woman has to use something to masturbate, I guess. I guess it's the same concept. And I have to do it for the rest of my life. So I'm not too thrilled about that. But that's part of the maintenance. Once you have a vaginal canal or vagina, you have to be diligent in using this to keep your vagina open. And the surgeon also said if you're planning to engage in penetrative sex as a female, meaning if you're going to have sex with men, when they penetrate you with their penis, you need to have enough depth. So the surgeon said, I think for your case, we would shoot for 5-inch depth. So I don't know, because I never had a vagina before. I fantasized, but that's what they said. That would typical. He said for women, that's like the typical size, 5 inches, give or take, depending on the size of the woman, I guess. But they also said that when a man is engaging in sex with you, you have to kind of get them to be hard. I don't like using this kind of terminology because it's kind of, I'm kind of like, it's like taboo, but I have to get used to it, especially if I'm going to live as a woman, because basically you have to excite the man. And I want to get graphic, but they said generally women engage in oral sex, and I know what they mean by that, but I can't fathom that I would ever do that. In fact, I can't picture that women do that. I never had it where a woman did that to me, and I can't envision doing that with a guy. And, I look at these women, they're lawyers, professionals, librarians, teachers, and I can't envision that a woman would do that. I don't know, call me old-fashioned or whatever, but, I just can't see that. But I guess that's nature, and that's what sex is all about. But I'm very naive with sex, so, I don't know all that kind of stuff. And even if a woman sat down and told me all this, if she was knowing that I would consider having sex with men, they might give me pointers, but, I'm not ready for that, and I don't think I ever will be. I'm just basically doing it for feeling more like a woman. Sometimes it's surreal when I talk about this because I don't feel comfortable talking about it. So to me it's surreal, but it's part of being a female, whether you're born female or you identify as female, and you do the surgeries to kind of conform to that of a female. So, being that I was in this car accident, my surgeon and my psychiatrists are kind of concerned about my mental state and if I can go through with this surgery, because they said it's going to be like 3 months of recovery and I'm going to need lots of bed rest and need people to kind of help me. So I'm hoping to do the surgery because this would be my 5th postponement, and most likely they wouldn't want to do it because I keep saying I want to, and then I cancel out. So this time I'm not planning to cancel out unless, of course, it's absolutely necessary because I'm not able to handle it. But it's on now, September 10th of this year, so I'm not going to change it. And once it gets closer, I'm going to go through with it. So hopefully everything will get resolved with my car. Hopefully I'll be able to drive again and find a way to pay a down payment at least for the car, but get a lower monthly loan payment. because I was paying $500 a month and my insurance is $700 a month. You know, that's a big chunk of my money. So I hope that this isn't going to dramatically change my insurance rate. And I'm also hoping that they're not going to drop me, because now they're going to think I'm high risk, even though the accident wasn't my fault. So I have a lot of things on my mind, and plus my son, and knowing that I'm going to eventually have to put him in a group home. So this is all weighing on me, you know, and I'm not working. I haven't worked in 7 years. But I got good news that they're extending my long-term disability based on the reports filed by me and my psychiatrist, that they're extending my long-term disability, which was supposed to term out in July, at the end of July. So now I'm extended to June of 2021, and then it will come up for review again. So that's a good thing, you know, one less thing to worry about in the interim. And I'm just trying to keep a good mindset. But the things that bother me is that I've been discriminated against. You know, I tried to test the waters with getting employment at a CPA firm, but I was very leery because I have to make at least $75,000 to cover the $60,000 I make, because I get $36,000, which is non-taxable because it's disability long-term under a private plan, and I get like 36 plus 50, but right, 36, 46, yeah, 24 Social Security disability annually, and 36 long-term disability. So I'm making 60, but if 36 is tax-free, I'd have to demand a salary of 75, and it just isn't in my favor, because I've been out of work 7 years. I've been depressed, suicidal. I've been in the hospital multiple times. So, and then I have car accidents, and you can't work for a CPA firm if you can't drive a car or don't have a car. So that doesn't look promising, and I have so many things going on. And, you know, I can't deal with the pressure in a job now, especially with all that's going on with my son situation, my situation with being trans and hoping to do surgery, and my worries about so many things like the house, not having a car right now, hoping to get a car again, and an insurance that I can afford that's not going to skyrocket. So how can I devote my time and work in a 40-hour work week, or even a 20-hour? Plus, I couldn't take a 20 or 40-hour work week if they're only going to pay me 60, and even worse, 50. Then I'm not going to be able to afford the house or some of those utilities. So that's why I'm in a catch-22, and it's really bothering me. I'm discriminated against. People make fun of me. Lots of my former friends who I thought were friends left me, you know, with no explanation other than, oh, transgender, let's stay away, like I'm got some communicable disease. You know, people are so misinformed. And that's the same with depression, and I'm getting fed up, because depression is a legitimate illness, you know, and it gets me really pissed when they say, oh, you're just depressed, you can snap out of it. They don't understand, and I'm tired of their ignorance, you know, and I'm tired of the treatment that people have regarding me, and even my sisters, you know. They ignore my texts anytime it has to do with my mental state. especially with this accident, and I said I'm extremely depressed. They don't want to hear it, but they have lives of their own. But I'm their brother or now sister or whatever you want to call it, and they just don't have time for me. They don't want to talk about it. They post like my Aunt June is in the hospital. She's sick, unfortunately, and I even sent her encouraging comment. But my sisters both send her an encouraging comment and wishing for her recovery, which I'm fine about, because they should. But me getting into a horrific car accident and literally preparing to die, you would think they would be concerned. You would think they would say, I'm so glad you made it through. Nothing. They didn't post anything on my Facebook page. In fact, not many people have. I see posts that have over 300 likes. And here I'm lucky if I get 5 or 6 likes. I'm not doing it for that. But I think that people are not responding to me, no matter how serious the post is, no matter that I almost died in a horrific car accident. They just ignore me. And I'm wondering, is it because I'm transgender and they don't care about me enough to, express some form of sympathy? Like, I'm not looking for sympathy, but you would think if they can like somebody and express it in comments for something like, oh, their cat died, and they're getting like 300 likes, whereas I almost died in a horrific car accident, and I swerved out of hitting a car in front of me, which would have been a catastrophe, because then the back car would have hit us too. I'd probably be dead. And they don't even care. And I bet if I did die, I wouldn't get any more likes than I do now, which is about a half a dozen likes. And most of those are loyal friends who sincerely take an interest. But others, they don't send me any, they don't even send me a message privately saying, oh, I'm so sorry what happened. Only a few, and I'm getting really pissed about that. It's like I don't exist, or people just don't care about me. And it's not fair. And there are people who do, because I talk to them, I message them, they're very concerned for me. Yeah, I have a handful of those. But generally, nobody cares. I could get killed in a car accident and they wouldn't care. And that really bothers me. Well, I think also if they don't care about that, they won't even attend my funeral. And if that's the case, I'm not going to cry about it. They don't want to attend, and that's their problem, not mine. That's what my psychiatrist says. And he said, you're doing these beautiful writings for you. You're not doing it for others. If they don't comment or appreciate it, then fuck them, Don't let them bother you. Just let them go. Don't relate to them. But I am somewhat like, if I see somebody who's going through a hard time, I'm there and I'm trying to offer advice. You think they'd do the same for me? No. So I'm tired of being a doormat, I can't be like that. I have to have backbone, because that really upsets me to no end. And I'm a very sensitive person. So it really bothers me when I see some pages with 80 likes, 90 likes, and with 50 or more comments. And here I get 1 or 2 comments with maybe 5 or 6 likes. And it just pisses me off. But I'm not doing it for that kind of attention. But I think with all that I go through, I think it warrants some kind of attention. And it really isn't happening, so I'm used to it now, so I don't really care, I don't envision people liking my comments, with the exception of the few who are decent people. So I'm not going to get hung up on that anymore. I have more important things to worry about, like my son, like me with upcoming surgery and being able to recover, and with my son with trying to figure out if he should be in a group home. And the house, I can't do anything. I don't have the financial resources to fix it up. And I have medical bills that I'm trying to work out plans, like pay maybe no more than $50 a month, which is going to take a long time, but that's the best I can do, you know? And I don't know about the car now. Do I take it off insurance, or should I keep it on just in case, you know? So I'm all kind of messed up and confused. But the insurance company and Toyota seem to be helpful and understanding and compassionate. So I'm just tired of society, you know, with regard to transgender people and people who are depressed. It's like they haven't come around, they haven't noticed that these are real issues. I just saw on the news that this year the head of the NCPD is very concerned because they're losing lots of men, policemen. I don't know about policewomen, but they focused on policemen, who 5 or 6 of them have committed suicide between January of this year to this current month of August, right? We're in August, yeah. And, you know, that's really terrible. You know, and all these policemen are seeing so much and they can't take it, so they wind up committing suicide. You know, and I've been there myself, where I can't take things, and I've attempted suicide. I overdosed in January and almost died, but the doctors worked their miracles and I survived. So, and I do want to do the male to female transgender surgery for the vagina, but I'm hoping it will go through. I'm hoping I'll be okay up here, and I'm hoping I get my resolved issue with the car and that it's favorable. And if that all happens, things will work out, and then I can start focusing on my son's situation. But, you know, it's going to take time because I can't keep walking far distances. I walked all the way to my pharmacist to pick up medication. I didn't have a ride, so I just walked it. And it's like a 5-hour walk round trip. And in 5 hours, if I'm walking at a clip of 20 minutes a mile, which isn't unreasonable, I would be there in 20, 40, 60, 80, 100 for an hour and almost 45 minutes round trip just to get medication, you know? And God forbid it's a rainy day, because when you need your medicine, you need your medicine. And unfortunately, they don't do delivery service. They don't have Uber set up where they do delivery of pharmacists' medication. So I think it's because they don't want to take the responsibility, God forbid, the Uber driver experiments with the medication. They have to be very careful because of possible lawsuits. So they want you to pick it up in person and prove ID. So that's why I had to walk there, because no taxi cab's gonna wait for me, or Uber or Lyft, while I'm waiting for my prescription to be filled, you know? And that's why I call ahead, or I give them the script, thinking that it will be done by the time I come. And sometimes it is, but sometimes it's not. So I hate people who discriminate. I hate people who don't even want to know you. I hate people who make fun of you. I hate people who judge you. And this happens in the workplace too, which really bothers me. There are cliques, You know, there are people out there to get your job, and once they realize you're transgender, it's almost like, oh, they should be gone and I'll take over. So, you know, I don't have job security, and I haven't even had the opportunity to at least interview, you know, because Robert Half has been rude to me, where I called and then they hung up after I told them some things. And then I call again, saying, oh, I think we got disconnected. And then I hear them put the phone down again. And this time they slam it to make a point. So I'm not dealing with Robert Half. And plus, I'm not mentally able to work right now. I don't think I ever will be, unfortunately, because it sucks when you don't work. And the only thing that keeps me busy is, you know, my son and doing my writings. But now I am missing a big component with driving, you know. If I'm unable to drive, I'm going to go crazy. And God knows what I can do. You know, who knows? Maybe I'll just do this like my cousin did, or do what my father did, because I can't take this anymore. You know, and it's really bothering me. So that's the way it is right now for me. I'm very depressed. I'm sad. I have no friends to hang out with the exception of my good female to male friend, but he works too. So I can't keep relying on him. And I have another male to female. Well, he's female to male, but I have a friend who's male to female, but hasn't done anything. No hormones, is heavy set, still lives as a guy, even though he's insistent that he's a female, but he hasn't done anything yet towards that. So I'm a little reluctant, because I don't think, if he's like this, I don't think he's going to change. So if he is legitimately transgender and he's unable to change, then I feel sorry for him or her. So at least I'm transitioning, and now I just wish I could get my life in order socially and my son's. And that's where I stand right now. And I'm feeling very depressed because I'm discriminated against. I had lots of friends who abandoned me, you know, and it's just tough, you know. I can't take it anymore, you know. I mean, what's the point of living if you're being ignored, you're being ostracized, looking like you're never going to be able to do the surgery, you know. It's just very depressing. So all I can do right now is try to hang in there, be positive, and try to do the best of this, make the best of this situation, and have hope that everything will work out. So that's what I'm hoping for. So anyway, I talked for almost an hour and a half, and I think it's time to say goodbye. So, good